May the 4th, 2019. As you're looking at amazing images from SOHO, this is LASCO C2, and this is a satellite, guys, that gives us an Earth-facing perspective of the sun. Now, what you're seeing is what, if you remember 2 weeks ago, we were watching a large sunspot. It was giving off minor solar flares, but even those minor solar flares during grand solar minimum with our weak shields were having an impact on the weather on our planet and the earthquakes. It has returned after 14 days. Now, it's 27.8 days or something like that, guys, not quite 28 days for a full rotation of an object on the sun, such as a sunspot. So every 27.8 days it rotates around. It's been 14 days since it went around the right side of the sun, but this is that sunspot. Now, this is a coronal mass ejection, one of the strongest we've seen in a while. And again, they were mentioning that this thing was getting stronger. Coronal mass ejection, guys, is when the surface of the sun explodes. It can be because of a solar flare or a filament release. Anyway, that's a lot of power. It's not a direct Earth-facing CME because it's just now coming again around that left side of the sun. What's important about it is that, again, our shields are weak. If this thing continues to erupt like this, we could see major problems. Already, just the side burst of this had radio brownouts with your ham radios and things like that. Now, on this rotation, they're calling this sunspot AR1944. Now, this was a 90-degree angle towards the Earth. Again, the satellite gives us an Earth-facing perspective. It says future CMEs might be more geo-effective, which means more Earth-facing, because it is now turning for 14 days. We'll have to deal with it on our side of the sun. And if you look back on May 3rd, there was a CME. It was on the back side. It wasn't quite that strong. And if you go back to the history of this, on April the 30th, guys, there was a significant far side coronal mass ejection. We've got to pay attention to it. Even in solar maximum, this is a very strong coronal mass ejection. There's a plasma discharge. Guys, the sun is the size of the white circle that you see inside this, what they call a red occulter disk. Now, unlike SOHO, which looks directly at the sun, this disk that's on an extended arm of the satellite blocks the brightness of the sun so we can see these outward effects of what's happening. Also, you can see the comets that come in very well from this particular satellite. Now, switching satellites to the Solar Dynamics Observatory, we're still getting that Earth-facing perspective. But unlike SOHO that had the disk blocking the sun so we saw what was on the outside, they use 12 different cameras on this satellite, and we're looking at what's called the AIA-171. Look in the bottom left corner. It gives us this bronze or golden perspective and also the timestamp. Coming around that left side, guys, there's tremendous amount of energy in this continuously growing sunspot. What you're seeing around the sun is the magnetic canopy. And when you see that there's energy being released, the sun looks like a boiling gas giant, which it is. And the energy goes up, and then outside of this actual camera, most of those lines loop back down until you have a coronal opening, which is kind of like what you're seeing on the bottom and the top of this image, the north and south poles of the sun. Those are openings in that magnetic field. But over here to the left, this is what we've got to watch, guys, for the next 14 days. Now, as I do this close-up, watch very closely at the electrical arcs and the pulses. That last one, guys, was a whipping motion that caused that coronal mass ejection that we saw. It produced a minor solar flare also. But there's something that happens that even though this sunspot, let me be straight up about it, looks like it's very dangerous already, sometimes they will be semi-active until they reach a point called the Earth-Sun connectivity point. And what happens, guys, is this. If you look at the equator of the sun, kind of right through here, the Earth is slightly below it. We're kind of in the southern hemisphere. And so anything on this side of the sun is pretty much directly affecting us, but it is slightly below that equator. Now, there's something again called the Earth-Sun magnetic connectivity point. And normally that point is somewhere right in here. And what you've got is a giant flux tube. It's been picked up by our satellites as they travel through it. That is the actual connection point that keeps the Earth tied to the sun in its orbit. And that is a massive transfer of energy. It's like a vacuum tube. And so I've seen these sunspots for years come across. You see this one now, I don't think is going to wait to give us some trouble, to be honest with you. But what you get as you watch this thing, this area of the connectivity point, by the way, you'll see Mercury will have one, Mars will have one, Venus will have one. But when if you want energy flowing from the sun to the Earth, let one of these sunspots come to this point. And they drift, and it depends on especially the other planets, because they will rotate at different speeds as the Earth. But we pretty much stay in this right quadrant as far as our connectivity point, guys. And it's huge. It's much larger than the Earth. When we cross that flux tube, that energy completely surrounds the planet many times over. And if you want to ever do a scale of the Earth to the sun, the red line I've got drawn across the equator, it would take 109 planets our size of Earth connected side by side to go across that scale. But when it gets to that point, then that's when we've seen the strongest flares every time. You may be seeing strong flares, but when that hits, and you can see that solar flare to the left is slightly above the equator. Although the Earth is below that, the magnetic connectivity point it's like a long winding magnetic coil that's a plasma tube. When it hits that, it senses the electromagnetic, let me say that, connection point, which is a discharge point between positive and negative points. Now, all of these links that I'm showing you are on our website at bpearthwatch.com. If you scroll down, you can see earthquakes, the solar dynamics observatory that we're looking at, the Soho-Lascaux satellite here, guys. We could see the coronal mass ejection. You go down to space weather. Here you're going to see your solar wind speed, other information like that. So everything's here. It's linked. Originally, I'd linked everything on the website for myself just because I was watching all these things. And as the website got more and more people started watching it, guys, and it's had 3 or 4 million hits. Then we started linking more links, both Earth and space. So it's you can go through here and get quite an education. I want to say one other thing. On our Alexa Pure water filtration system, guys, many of you bought these last year. So many bought them when we put them down to $149. And what it is it's through my Patriot Supply, and they retail them at $249. Sometimes you'll see them at $199. But so many of you guys bought them last year when they went to $149. Guys, they sold out. They had to set up the supply for the stainless steel tanks that you see there. And now they got them back. $199 on their website. If you come here, because so many of you bought these last year, it's $100 off. Guys, it's the #1 water filter on the planet. This is about 1.8 cents per gallon because it has a filter that comes in it it's a charcoal filter, top in the world on 99.9% of all contaminants. Now click on that link. It will take you to this website that my Patriot Supply built for us. We've been with them for going on probably 7 years now. But guys, it's $100 off. $149, 1.8 cents per gallon. This is the charcoal filter that goes in the bottom. you can, after 5,000 gallons, and think about it. Think about this. If you go buy, say, some good spring water, real water, it's about $1 a gallon, right? Or $1 a six-pack. But that, you're talking about 5,000 gallons, so that's $5,000. Plus, at that point, you can replace the filter. And you can buy these filters in a 2-pack or 4-pack and save money. And you get it down to less than a penny per gallon. Stainless steel won't rust. I've had it for 2 years. We invented the Aquaflow Max that goes into it, that provides an open air push to speed up your outflow. Again, come here, click on the link, and you can read all of the things the filters take out: heavy metals, fluoride, chlorine, viruses and bacteria, pesticides, and pharmaceuticals. You can take this to a lake or stream or river. When it goes through this charcoal filter, it's the best tasting water you can get. For 2 years, all of my ice, all of my tea, my coffee, any cooking water, all my drinking water goes through this. It's that big of a difference. Guys, never have you ever been able to buy this filter for that. It's a lifesaver. It's very light. It's stainless steel. You can take the tanks apart and put it in a bug-out bag. It weighs almost nothing. Set it up on a campsite or just set it on your counter and use it for everything you need until you need to bug out. And just watch again. They'll run specials on the filters, which puts it from, when I said 1.8 cents per gallon, that's including the stainless steel tank. But when you replace the filter, again, less than a penny a gallon. You can't beat it. There's a rule. It says you can go 3 days without water. You can go 3 weeks without food if you have water. 3 days without water. So to me, it's the most important thing you can do for your family. I won't ever sell you silver or gold. They'll be cast into the streets because they were the stumbling block and the iniquity of my children, God said. This is what God, if you're going to prepare, He knows you're in your human body. You don't want to walk around looking for water and get in a FEMA line. And also, we have my Patriot Supply freeze-dry food that's a 20-year Mylar shelf life. That's how you prepare. It's not by thinking you can have enough silver or gold or currency, because once it hits the fan, guys, that's useless. Just let a blackout come. The 2 weeks during Katrina, it was useless. The stores there was no electricity. There was no water for 2 weeks. You learn a lot in that period of time. But anyway, guys, finally, after 5 months now, almost 5 months, we have it back, and we have it at the lowest price. Guys, thank you for supporting the channel. When you do that, you're creating life-supporting systems for your family. We appreciate it. It helps us. It's a heads up. Be safe.